Managing Director of Calais Ventures and GEN Board Member, Rebecca Wong.
I come with a fan base. Hi, good morning. It's so nice to be back here in Puerto Rico. Many of you may not know, but I have a history with this island. I got married in Puerto Rico a number of years ago, so this really feels like coming back home. It's always so nice to see familiar faces that I've seen every single year for 10 years, especially in times of change as we are experiencing right now. So welcome back to GEC. Right now, my job is to warm up the crowd. I'm going to be talking a little bit for about 15 minutes on AI and how AI is changing our skills, education, what the next generation should be learning to be able to prepare for this great transition that we are undergoing right now as a human species. After that, we'll sit down and I'll invite our panelists today to talk about the future of entertainment and how artificial intelligence is going to shape up our creativity. And we'll continue the discussion on how this is going to have meaningful consequences for the way we approach education of skills like creativity and the arts. All right, so we have now had about almost 2 years. We're approaching a year and a half since the release of ChatGPT. We have all learned about artificial intelligence. We have tried it. Some of us may be even addicted to these tools that are promising to increase productivity for us. I want us to reflect now on what are we living today that are going to be creating changes that will be irreversible in the way we interact as humans, in the way we approach our roles and our jobs, and especially what this means to our new generations and education. One thing that I want us to be really clear about, change is not coming, it's already here. I sit in Silicon Valley. I'm an investor, a venture capitalist, and I also teach at Stanford and Thunderbird School of Global Management. With this perspective, sitting in the heart and the main hub where AI innovation is happening, what I see is a very disjointed reality. On the one hand, we see announcements at companies that are having the first experiences with AI. They're applying it. In some cases, they're also claiming that they are increasing margins by lowering costs and replacing some of their human roles with artificial intelligence. Some of these early success cases are being now shared widely around the world. But on the other hand, right, we see in places like Silicon Valley, just last year, we had close to 270,000 layoffs. And this is continuing. This is significantly higher than in previous years. And what's really notable here is that the reason for which these companies are declaring their layoffs is because of preparation to automation. Sometimes they're very explicit that they're going to use AI tools to create more efficiencies within their workforce. So these are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs in technology that we are already replacing, losing, and potentially augmenting with artificial intelligence. So I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. I wonder every single day, how is this going to change my advice to them on what they should be studying, what are the skill sets that they should be acquiring, and how to best prepare for some of these new rules in the game. On the one hand, we see layoffs. On the other hand, we see tremendous abundance. We see that there are at least $200 billion being invested in AI in the US, in the VC space, which is, roughly speaking, half of all the money that goes into venture capital. That's a lot of funding, plus almost 300,000 people out of a job. You do the math, right? There's going to be a lot more development and innovation in the space of AI-founded startups in the world, and especially in Silicon Valley. We estimate that this is a multi-trillion-dollar market that's being developed. Thanks to this trend, we have companies like NVIDIA that have already surpassed comfortably the couple trillion-dollar mark. And we will see more of this as some of these tools become applicable and useful in the market. But not everybody will have a role in some of these new, really abundant conditions. What we see is a clear shift that we do have 27-year-olds coming out of a machine learning / data science career, and they can get jobs in Silicon Valley at a starting salary of $750,000. And yet, we see a lot of programmers who have been looking for a job for 6+ months, and they're not able to get it. So that disparity is going to continue, and what we want is that in our jobs as educators, as advisors, mentors, and parents, we know what these students should be focusing on, and how we, all of us, should be reskilling and upskilling to be able to participate in these new trends. So this is a question that I ask my students every single day. Are you irreplaceable? Are you, each one of you, irreplaceable? And if you're not irreplaceable and your role can easily be done in an automated fashion, then what are your specific contributions in that process of creativity, product design, sales, you name it, where your human contribution is unique? There is something that you do that is irreplaceable. The other day I asked a student in my class at Stanford, tell me what your superpowers are. And she was really excited to share with me, I'm really organized, I'm really good at making lists, I can execute those lists, that's my superpower. And I said, replaceable, 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 right? None of that is going to matter when you go and look for an employment opportunity, because most of those skills are not unique to humans anymore. So think harder. What is irreplaceable in that organizational skill you just shared with me? And then she started to say, well, I have a long list, but I'm really good at prioritizing what's important to do first, how the sequence of that list actually creates a flow that can leverage the skill sets and the mood of my team members. Okay, then we're getting closer to something that is a little bit more irreplaceable. And that's the exercise that I recommend to all of you, because I actually thought myself when AI exploded, my role as a teacher is absolutely replaceable. Who's going to pay $60,000, $70,000 for somebody to give you knowledge? You can do that for free. So now I had to innovate, and I'll show you some of the experiments I've been running to make sure that my contribution in the classroom is actually irreplaceable. And this is a sentiment that we're having now, right, with some of the skills that are being replaced. We are saying, wait a minute, I wanted robots and machines to do something that I don't want to do. I don't want it to do the fun stuff, like create poems and music so that I can still wash my dishes. I want to do the opposite, right? And so in those sentiments that are being expressed by many humans now, the question is, all right, then, what is it that we want machines to do? Do we still have agency to be protagonists in assigning things that we don't want to do or time-consuming, too costly to machines and AI, but still keep close to our hearts roles that we want to do, that we want to still be a human endeavor? In this, I want to reframe something. Oftentimes, people ask, which roles, which jobs, which industries are going to disappear or be replaced first? And I say, that's a wrong question. Every single one of our jobs will change. All of your jobs will have a part of that job description that's going to change. This is a fact. I have no doubt if you can find a single job where AI is not going to create even the slightest disruption, we'll have a bet. But what is going to change is not necessarily that you will have no employment. we're going to start changing paradigms. For example, have you ever thought why 40 hours a week? You know, we work really hard, comes Friday, our brains don't even work anymore, we already squeezed every ounce of energy and brain power out of that brain, and then we go into the weekend, we rest, and Monday we start over, right? But it's this cycle of, let's just extract productivity from humans until they can no more. It comes from the Industrial Revolution, right? This concept of let's have a week where the unit of productivity is the human. And I just learned recently that this word ocio, which in Spanish means to be idle or to be able to contemplate, comes from Greek. And it means, at that time, in its origins, was something that was a privileged activity for the nobility. You could have ocio, which is something that you could enjoy and devote your life to philosophical thinkings and musings. And then negocio, the Spanish word for business, was a negation of ocio. Negocio is a negation of ocio. And guess what? It was reserved for, at that time, for the slaves. So it was not deemed a worthwhile activity for the nobility, right? Somehow we flipped. All humans are doing negocio right now, right? And the ocio, who's doing the ocio? And that's what I want to reframe here today. We do have the opportunity to go back to a productivity framework, a definition that is based on enriching, meaningful, purpose-driven activities for humans. And then the negocio, the busy work, let's leave it to the machines, right? So maybe that means that we don't work 40 hours a week, maybe it means that we work 20 or 25. We'll see. But we need to be able to think outside of the box, right? What we are going to be seeing a lot of is anxiety. We have already seen this. 2010, John Haidt, an author in New York, a professor at NYU, published a book called The Anxious Generation. We saw social media in 2010 increased anxiety, depression, and self-mutilation to levels that we haven't seen before. It's actually stark to see the graphs go like that. 3 times higher in many cases, especially for young females. So imagine what could happen now, where we're going to be using all this new technology that's going to, for a fact, change the way humans interact, maybe permanently rewire their brains. The anatomy of the brain changes when we use technology at that scale. And so we will be facing very different problems when it comes to managing teams as leaders of organizations. And this definition of CEOs, of chief emotional officers, will become truer than ever. So one thing that I will say was reassuring to me last year was to think that, well, okay, we'll have a lot of technology, but we'll always be supervisors, right? We will be in control of this technology. And now I'm already seeing products where there are fully automated workers, this is in the market already, that can also act as editor curators and supervisors. So I'm feeling less confident that this is guaranteed, unless we actually make sure that we do have a role in all of these jobs. But what I'm sure about is that I'm in a situation of uncertainty. Key principle that I tell my kids is just diversify. I can't tell you if studying computer science or math or STEM or what. Honestly, the only thing I can tell them that will probably create returns is play soccer. Because I'm a soccer fan, and there's a lot in soccer that is about improvisational, leadership management, decision-making in split second. I'm from Argentina, so you know, I'm biased. Hey, where's the clapping for Argentina champion? Come on. But the point is, they will have to not only diversify, they will have to learn to adapt with change constantly and know how to tell the story on how they are irreplaceable. What about their skill sets and their knowledge, life experience, is going to be irreplaceable? And so far, I've gotten so far to say humans we're rich in experiences, machines are rich in data. So I said, don't accumulate data, accumulate experiences, because that, I don't know how, but will be probably your competitive advantage over AI when it comes down to you creating your job opportunities. Everybody in this room is in the field of entrepreneurship, so you probably have heard the definition of entrepreneurs and founders jump off a cliff and build a plane while falling, right? This is familiar. So what you're facing today, which changed the rules, is that you're building planes, but then your neighbor is building rocket ships, and they're already in Mars, right? So you may have survived the fall, but the bigger issue is that we may not have a planet. And so what I'm asking you in thinking about the new skill sets in your organizations, in your clusters, is are you focusing on optimizing the right technology? People have been optimizing, horse-based carriages for a long time, but that last 5% improvement on that was probably meaningless as soon as the car appeared, right? You could be optimizing the perfect surfboard, but is that going to be enough to ride a tsunami? So choosing where you're spending your time right now is crucial, because even though it could be productive in the traditional sense, it may not give you the results that you need to be prepared for an AI era. And the keywords here are improvisation, adaptive, resilience, creativity under uncertainty and pressure. And this means a culture that is comfortable with change and lack of information. And that's what I try to do with a lot of my students. And this is the last thing that I'm going to share with you before we kick off the panel. I've been really actually doing introspection on what is irreplaceable about my teaching. Because me standing in front of a room and talking and transferring knowledge just from one place to another to the brains of my students is obsolete now, right? We had schools because information was concentrated in libraries and a few people, but now information is ubiquitous. Everybody can access information and actually contradicting forms of information. So my job is not to become just a more lively version of the bot, right? I have to provide an experience to my students that is going to teach them something different than just data. So I've been experimenting. One of the things that I've done is see how can I get outside of the classroom. This exercise was called Creativity Under Pressure. And the task at hand was to solve a Rubik's Cube. Anybody solved Rubik's Cubes before? So under 11 minutes is actually really hard if you haven't done this before. Rubik's Cubes are solved with algorithms, so you can learn the patterns of the colors, and if you get really, really good at it, you could even solve it in seconds. The world champions do it in seconds. But I tell them, I'm going to be making it hard for you. You're going to be wearing blindfolds, so you can't see the color. And you're going to be doing a wall sit while doing it, so that your lurks are burning and you're distracted with the pain of doing the wall sit. So how do you do it? Well, you form teams. Now, you go out and find 3 team members who can partner with you to solve this problem. And these students didn't know each other at all. What really surprised me in the beginning, which was somewhat predictable, but everybody was now looking for the nerd-looking profiles in the room, the ones that looked like they could be doing puzzles, and I felt finally the revenge of the nerds. They never were picked first in sports, now they're picked first, great. And I also told them 2 members of your team will not have any instructions on your roles. One is doing the wall sit and handling the cube. Nobody else can touch the cube. The other person will be giving you instructions. 2 people, you have no instructions. Why? AI era, roles are undefined, so you figure it out. They formed their teams, they started doing this, and of course, the first thing was one team figured out that there is an app based on AI where you can take pictures of the cubes and it gives you the formula. One team adopted it, it spread like wildfire. Another metaphor, right? If one team is using AI, then you cannot ignore the existence of this tool because we're talking about cost differences that could be 1 to half, 1 to 2, or 100,000 to 1. For example, in video making, now you can make 10-second Instagram ads based on video, which cost $100,000 to produce in Silicon Valley. Now you can do it for $1, right? If the cost differential is 100,000 to 1, you cannot ignore it. You're not going to win the game, right? So once the technology was adopted, it spread like wildfire. Number 2, very quickly, the students realized, wait a minute, I should have not recruited the nerd because the nerd's job is now done by AI. I have an app for that. I should have recruited athletes, or at least, students with really strong legs, so they can do these wall sits longer. Because every time they switch, they have to develop new nomenclature to do the instructions. Imagine having to tell somebody with no vision how to change color. It's a very difficult communication task. And so now they thought, I should have recruited really good communicators and really good athletes. In fact, one of them won the challenge, soccer player, back to soccer, right? Could do the wall sit for 11 minutes straight. So the whole time, there was lessons that were being built on top of other lessons, and they were able to innovate very, very fast. The third thing I'm going to show you in the video. I should tell you the disclaimer that Stanford did not sign a waiver for me to hit my students with balls. This was done under the table. All right, so that diabolical laugh, ignore, but Stanford students are very entitled. Sometimes you do want to hit them between us. The question here is that I started to disturb them with these snowballs, fluffy, snowballs that were just distractive to the person who's trying to focus. But I was hitting them so that it would create an unpredictable disruption to their task. What was really interesting is that half of the teams just stood there watching me do it. They didn't figure out that they could defend their team leader. The other half, all teams that won, had those 2 team members who didn't have instructions started defend. They found a role. They said, okay, now I know what I have to do. My job, self-imposed, self-declared, is to protect my leader. And they started to defend and block me from distracting their leader. This is a great way for me, first of all, to not be irreplaceable in the classroom, but second, it's a metaphor about this era that we're living. The profiles that you think are the ones that you need for a product, for a sales project, for the founding of an organization, for operations, may not be what you think. Maybe that soccer player with strong legs, right? Second, most of us will have to learn on the fly. We'll have to be building that rocket ship as we are facing these disruptions, and it's adaptation at every second as we face the new disruptions that are coming our way. That skill of flexibility, versatility, and adaptation, honestly, I would teach my students just improvisational skills, improv comedy, because you have to be quick on your feet. That's really the key to the future. And finally, as I mentioned before, you have to be able to understand the role of technology. Even if you don't agree with the use of AI on certain fields, you cannot be unfamiliar with it because your rival, your competitor, will have that competitive advantage. So with that, I hope that we provoked some thinking and some questions, especially, so that we can now pass on to the panel and continue the discussion. Thank you so much.